I'm Michael Daugherty. I was from Detroit, Michigan, raised by two Detroit police officers. My parents met when they were police officers in Detroit. My dad ran homicide. He was an inspector, like Columbo, more than a street cop. So this is probably where I got my sense of entrepreneurialism and grit and when you're raised by two police officers, you have a huge sense of justice and don't break the rules or we'll crack you over the hand. So I was living the American dream doing that. And I didn't want to go into police work. In my family was the first one that went to college, and I went into business, but in medicine. So this is a story about really humming along in the American dream in the world, and I really did have a great run, and I will still have a great run. But also I wanted to let people know, not from a crybaby or victim point of view, but just from an educational and entertaining point of view in a way, what our government is truly capable. And not only what they're capable, but how. So to allude back to a story, I think he's exactly right. And when I wanted to write this book, I was like, well, I want to be effective. And being more conservative, I'm like a conservatarian, they like to say, I learned, and who has better grasp of the emotions and the heartstrings of the country is really liberal. So there's a woman named Lisa Crone in Los Angeles who's at University of California, UCLA. She wrote a book, Wired for Story. And if you ever want to really get into a really interesting education about writing for story for social change, I highly recommend you look up Lisa Crone, Wired for Story, and watch her 50-minute talk, because she's liberal and she's unabashed. But what she says is this: basically, the human brain is wired in just conversation more combatively. If I just come at you and I tell you what's going on and I just give you the facts, by default, our brains just get in some sort of neuroscience position where you're even subconsciously you're wondering, okay, this person's outside of me, and so I'm in a survival mode. What does this mean to me? And you're just by default opposite. Story brings you together, and it neutralizes that opposition in the brain. So it's not so much being emotional. Ironically, it's like the unemotional reason to be emotional. It's a factual reason why we need to tell story and to understand. And that was the foundation, because I didn't want to bay at the moon. I wanted to kick their butt. And I wanted people to really learn, and I wanted to have a shift. So that's sort of the method of the madness, the foundation of how we branded the book. Notice the red eye and the blue eye, because I wanted to transcend the political divide. I didn't want this book was really started before the presidential election, so that's when Obama had this much Teflon on him. So just the fact that you would have the devil inside the Beltway, people go, well, that's criticizing Obama, which it's not even, I think his name's in the book once. Okay, so what happened is I worked in surgical sales for years, and then I started my own company called LabMD. And LabMD is a pathology lab that just focuses on prostate cancer and bladder cancer. And we built a niche vertical. And having worked in medicine and worked in surgery for all these years, I knew all the physicians on a first-name basis. And those relationships gave me unfiltered, basically, needs. What we want, what we need, what's not working for us in our practice. What wasn't working was managed care was tearing them to shreds, and they didn't have a pathologist who knew what they were doing enough. Like, I've got to go and say, sir, you've got cancer, but I'm not a pathologist. I'm totally dependent on the guy that's reading the slides. So the two big things that we sold the company on was, one, we have pathologists that do nothing but read this type of tissue. So in a hospital, you've got someone that reads everything. And actually, prostate cancer is very difficult to read and diagnose. And it's obviously the number 2 cancer, or number 1, depending on what your data is, prostate and breast. The other one was streamlining the office. Managed care was cracking everything so that these doctors were no longer being able to decide who read their tissue. The insurance company was deciding what lab it went to. And what lab it went to was based on price, not by quality of pathologist. So our software would organize our office, and it would send, and about 15% of the marketplace was an absolute, we don't care, it has to go there type thing. So by having our software point it to the right place, by solving that 15% problem of it must go there, we got the 85%. So that was our boutique niche play, and it worked out beautifully for years. And I didn't want to go public. I wish I would have gone public now. I probably wouldn't be standing here, but I probably would be like not knowing this hurricane could have hit me. I would have been in and out. But I really wanted to build a good medical facility and have a good life in that world. And it was because it's a great world. And people that are in medicine, we don't respect enough, I think, or appreciate enough if you're not. I think these are people that have, well, everyone has a higher calling, I hope, in what they do. That's very obvious, I think, for people that are trying to diagnose cancer. So that's all going along beautifully one day. And I'm going to skip over things. And then in 2008, we got a phone call from a gentleman called Robert Baubeck. And Robert Baubeck is the CEO of a company named Tyversa. And Tyversa is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my VP comes down and says, we got a call from this guy. He says he's found one of our files in cyberspace from a peer-to-peer network. Well, what's a peer-to-peer network? This is 2008. So do you remember Napster? When people were so after Napster, people started using these peer-to-peer software packages where you would install software, put your music in a folder that'd be opened up to who else had the similar software. They could look, and you could look there, so you could trade. Well, we're like, prove it. Who is he? He sent the file over, and it was one file with 9,000 of our patients in 1,718 pages in a PDF file. It was a billing file. It had insurance carrier policy number, patient name, didn't have phone number, didn't have address. It had date of birth and social. This terrorized us. It's 2008. So I said in 2008, if I would have said the word breach, you would have thought about breach, birth, and that's it. You wouldn't think, now if I say breach anywhere in the country, they think cybersecurity. That was not in the mindset in 2008. And so we march up to billing. Now I have 30-something employees. We're $10 million a year. 12,000 square feet. We are teeny compared to LabCorp and Quest that are billion-dollar companies that we're up against. And the billing manager was listening to music via LimeWire. And she did not, and we found the file in that music folder. So we immediately got rid of it, got rid of LimeWire, soon got rid of her. But I will say in her defense, she did not know she was sharing, or she didn't even know she was making vulnerable the file. And we couldn't find the file out there. So the first thing we did is find it, get rid of it. Then we examined, and in a panic, by the way, and examined every workstation, and nothing. Then we go out into cyberspace, and since so much of our company is based on technology, we had 4 full-time employees just in IT, and we had outside company as well. So we're looking and looking and looking, and we can't find it anywhere. And this makes no sense. And he is emailing, because at this point I didn't trust him, because we asked him, how'd you get it? And where'd you find it? And who are you? And the same answer over and over was, that will require a services agreement, $475 an hour, probably $40,000, no guarantees. And felt like extortion. Called the lawyers, and we're just, and because I didn't trust him so quickly, I wouldn't talk to him. Everything's in writing, emails, which paid off in the book, because if I tell you what happened, it's not as credible as if I show you. So if I'm telling you the story, you're going, yeah, Mike's a victim, Mike's mad, who knows, cut that in half. But you're going to see the emails in the book, and those emails are how the book starts. And you'll see, and you make up your own mind, what his motivations were. So 2008 was basically what we considered veiled threats from him. They were, there's one email in there, it's like, did you see the Washington Post? Supreme Court Justice Breyer just had his personal information lost through P2P. So don't feel alone. You're not alone in this, but the longer you wait to get your hands around it, the bigger it's going to be. And this was at the same time, we just don't roll like this in medicine. It's not the way to build a relationship with a client. And then so I asked for the contract, because I didn't trust him, because I wanted to see what type of bogus stuff was going on in that agreement, and I wasn't disappointed. So later finally the summer of 2008, I say, go away. Only call our lawyer. And we got a call from his lawyer in November of 2008 that said, we're giving the file to the Federal Trade Commission because it's got personal health information in there, private health information, and we don't want to get sued or in trouble. Now, at this point, understand that our experience as a medical facility in regulatory was very positive because we were with our brethren in the regulatory process. This was not like an IRS audit where you have anxiety. We were with other scientists, technicians, and that's who inspected you, and you were in the industry together. So I wasn't afraid of the FTC. I just was, go ahead. You know, and in medicine also, if we really made a mistake, if you got rid of every doctor that made a mistake, wouldn't have any doctors. So we weren't even afraid of that. But we also were like, well, great. It's not out there. There's no damage. There's no patient damage. And so fine, go ahead. Bully for you. And then we continued looking for the file for about a year and nothing. And he went away. And 2009 was very quiet, except for our big brother feel. Because one point, while we were looking for the file all over the place, we got an email from him saying, people are looking for the file. And we went, that's us. Now, how does he know that? And it's 2008, right? So there's no Snowden, there's no WikiLeaks, there's no Assange, there's none of that. So you can't tell anyone because they're thinking what they say, the tin hat, they get a little like, okay, Mike, you're already kind of an emotional, extroverted guy, so time for a vacation. We get a phone call right after New Year's, 2010, from Alan Shear. Alan Shear is a big character in the book. He is the investigator from the Federal Trade Commission. He's a lawyer. He focuses on data privacy. And he calls and says very cryptically, hi, this is Alan Shear with the Federal Trade Commission. We're starting a non-public inquiry because a file has come to our possession, and you'll be getting a letter tomorrow. So Federal Express, we received 11 pages single-spaced. And this was the beginning of the bizarre nature of this entire journey. And Tyversa really got the ball rolling, but they're not the main actor. The main actor is what the government did with Tyversa and how they conducted themselves in working with LabMD. So again, we're in that mode where I'm like, well, 11 pages single-spaced by a government lawyer. Okay, that went back to probably 5 generations in my Greek heritage. So they wanted to know everything. I mean, and layouts, computer layouts, handbooks, training manuals, you name it. And so I was like, well, turnabout's fair play, just dump truck everything. So we sent them, first round, 5,000 pages. And keep in mind, small company, here come the lawyer bills. And this isn't covered by insurance yet. This isn't covered because this is now one of those situations where it's kind of a gray area and you're terrified because if our surgeons get a doubt that we have a problem, we're in trouble. And we don't know that we have a problem because no one will tell us and we can't find any proof that there's a problem. So now we have, this goes on for a few months. They move very slowly. They come in, they drop a bomb. They disappear. They call back. We had a conference call. At that point, they said we didn't answer any of their questions appropriately. Immediately, trust started to evaporate because it was trickery. The whole tone of voice, the whole the repetition of the same questions. My lawyer's baffled, and I have a fantastic lawyer, is very detailed and objective and linear, and when she's baffled, there's something going on. So our trust in them evaporated quickly, so we didn't want to have any verbal agreements. Now, when you don't have when you have a government lawyer that's going to give you an order verbally, and you know he's already going to change what he said, and the rearview mirror is just something to argue with, you try to get rid of it. So we agreed, and it was like right on mute button because we're in a conference. I was like, okay, no verbal nothing, because and then if you take a government lawyer and you make him write it down, the backside on that is, well, then he's going to expand it because he's going to cover his tail because now it's going to be documented. So like, pick your poison. So we picked the poison of documentation. So he was mad because the other thing you learn, they don't like to work real hard and they don't like to be challenged. And so we did a couple more rounds of this. This is thousands of dollars of building up in lawyer fees. It's amazing, because then the lawyer has to cover what they write and that does this, research and all this. It just starts spreading. And so we fly to Washington, D.C. Myself, my vice president and general manager, and my lawyer. And we're sitting in this room. It's out of NSI. I mean, having spent this part of my life never seemed to matter much, and then it all came back. Growing up in Michigan surrounded by police officers, federal judges, and lawyers, and being the only son and the oldest, So hanging with them seemed to suddenly pay off because I knew this was just not the way it's supposed to go. And we have, and it was like an episode of NSI. It's a room, it's all glass, it's smoked white glass, it's a glass table. Ruth Yodakin's one inspector here, Alan Shear's another inspector here. They're both lawyers, they're acting as investigators, and they're just asking the same questions. And it struck me, and of course the lawyer wanted me to do all the talking, so I'm just really in an observation mode here. We don't know what they're going to do. They won't tell us what we've done wrong. They just keep asking questions, and you don't want to tick them off. But all trust was blown away because I thought these guys either don't know what they're doing, and I don't believe that, or they're out to trip us up. The main thing we got out of DC then was what they want us to sign is a consent decree. They're saying, let me see if I get here, that they're saying they have the power as an administrative agency to protect consumers from deception and unfairness. And their position is that we might have been unfair by having a situation where data could have gotten out. Could. Not did. Could. And that it would have the potential to harm people without countervailing benefits. That's the law. Which means that they can nail you for anything. And they can make it up as they go along. And welcome to my nightmare. And I am railing against my lawyer because I'm kind of going through this whole Elizabeth Kubler-Ross thing about this can't be true, this can't be happening, this can't be going on. I'm just on this gerbil reel of just, no, this is not how we do things. How can I break a law and have nothing have happened? How can I be guilty when there's no one injured? How can any of this go on? Oh, and by the way, I'm telling my lawyer, the fact that Tyversa turned that file to the feds and the feds got it is a connection. Because knowing in medicine, we always get a patient, I can tell you, whenever you're screaming and yelling at the government and you say, I'm going to call the feds, you call the feds, almost always that goes in the dumpster. Those leads that are picked up are prior relationship leads. So I feel like that's possible, and I don't know yet. So come back, and I know I'm going to have to save myself. There's something really eerie evil about this. And they also want us to sign, so they want us to sign a consent decree. They don't say they want a consent decree yet. When we say, this is, you have to know you have to learn their language. It's like, what did we do wrong? Please look at consent decree between the Nutter decision, between the Federal Trade Commission and Nutter in Kansas. That's an answer. That's telling you the answer is buried there. So you go get the Nutter, and you download it, and then you pay your lawyer $10,000 to research that for a month, and you get some sort of thing, and you realize that some employee made a mistake and something might have gotten out. But the key was, how do they solve that problem? Well, everyone seems to be rolling over. They're signing consent decrees, and consent decrees are contracts. They're contracts with the feds that say, okay, I'll admit no wrongdoing, and I will agree to let you audit us. Oh, and I'm going to pay the bill for that for 2 decades. So I'm going to have the joy of government bureaucrats that have law school backgrounds and no medical or technology backgrounds marching through here for 2 decades, auditing us. And at that point, when I sign that unless you really know what you're doing, and most people don't in taking on the government, most of the lawyers are more like get in, get out, roll over, move on. There's no really good sharp negotiators in consent decrees. It's also chocked full of little bonus points like if you mess up, there's this fine. If you mess up, there's that fine. And there's the unwritten stories of the fact, oh, by the way, our chairwoman will be sitting in front of Congress every couple of years bringing your name back up as an example. It's because they want examples of so everyone else will learn. They're trying to build common law so they don't have to go to Congress. And I lost the lottery. Now, a lot of other companies lost the lottery. At this point, there's about 37 consent decrees, and they were all business. They were BJ's and TJ Maxx, and I think Sony at one point. But these are massive corporations that are not in medicine that can take this hit, roll over, and move on. The problem with a medical facility having that tinge of doubt is we're dead. Especially, but now we're kind of numb to cyber breaches. It's taken this many years, but in 2008, 2009, I'm going to Quest, LabCorp, big dogs. I am taking their business. They are not used to that. They are not happy. I'm keeping it. they're going to run around and spread doubt and innuendo. And nothing scares a surgeon more than HIPAA violations. So there was no way I could roll with this unless they would answer the question, what did we do? Which they wouldn't answer. They would just give us this opaque stuff. So that's my frustration. So then I start turning, again, I look back now and laugh. Now I'm suddenly an investigator. I don't know where I learned those skills. I didn't know I had them. But I started digging in the summer 2010, and here's the bottom line of what I found out. I found congressional testimony in 2007 in House Oversight, where Waxman was the chairman, and who's sitting right there, front and center, testifying in front of Oversight, is Robert Bobick from Tyversa. So that, as they say, that guy on the phone saying, I'm not telling you unless you pay, is sitting in front of Congress. Now I know how he got the FTC. Oh, wait a minute. There's the FTC sitting up at the same table. Oh, they must know each other. Oh, and here is Bobick's advisory board member who is also testifying. Why, that's General Wesley Clark. Oh, and who else is on their advisory board? Well, in 2009, it's Obama's head of cybersecurity, Howard Schmidt. So what we have is, this is like crony hell. And and the lawyers just want to deal with the box. And I'm like, I am not going down. I'm not the sacrificial lamb here. I'm not going to sit here and have my reputation ruined to make you go away, because that's the string you pull the lawyer's back. Just, chalk it up to experience, put it in the back behind you, and move on to your core competency. But the problem is that's not what happens. That's not what happens in this situation. I also found out then Homeland Security gave $24.5 million to Dartmouth. And Dartmouth was doing a study on cyber leaks. And who did they use? Tyversa. So I found a 2009 congressional testimony in front of Commerce, 2009 congressional testimony in front of Oversight. I find the FOIA, not the FOIA, the grant money. We FOIA'd it later, but we find the grant. We find a press release that Tyversa put out saying, and if this press release would have come out today, they would never have written it. But again, it didn't get picked up because everyone was kind of so blind to this. They said they have proprietary technology. They monitor millions of file workstations around the world. They downloaded in this study 13 million files. And that their technology can do 1.5 billion searches a day. And what I love about this is it sounds so crazy, but it's under oath in front of Congress. I mean, he said it and he's under oath and his hands up. So this is great because it's just surreal. Doesn't it sound surreal? So I'm thinking, I've got the connection. So I'm really excited actually, because then I go back to my lawyers and say, I've got the connection. This is all a setup. This is a racket. And they're like, it doesn't matter. All the FTC care about is the law. And the law, they're gonna drag you through the mud on this whole topic that it got out. Tyversa's got that file. It's found nowhere else, but it got out. And the fact that it could have gotten out is a problem. So the reality is, the real world is, you can spend millions of dollars fighting this all by your lonesome, or you can roll over. I couldn't roll over. Something was wrong. So we decided to wait and just try to play the game. Because the third option at the time was, what do you do when there's a big bad growling bear in front of you? You just smile and wait and hope they won't attack. So we didn't want to attack back, but I wasn't going to roll over either. We were going to kind of wait. And for the next 2 years, we just played along. And they went and asked for information, the same stuff over and over and over. And we hired law firms in D.C. that used to work at the FTC, so they knew what they were doing, which I won't talk about here, but it's all quite in the book, in the letters and the way that whole little triangle of, corporations, law firms, and government lawyers, and how, access is what where your next job can be. Then I also found our file through more research in the Congressional Record. I found our file in Wired magazine. I found our file in a Dartmouth study. We were being used as an example in a sacrificial lamb for a year, and I didn't even know about it. Now, they redacted everything out, and they didn't mention the company name, so it never came to my attention. It would just say an Atlanta laboratory or something like that, but that was it. But it was creepy and Big Brother-ish. And what I learned also then was, okay, what's the power of these agencies? And this is the fundamental thing I want Americans to understand, because I think fundamentally we're fair people and believe in the little guy, and we believe what we were taught in civics class. At least I was. Now I'm 53. I don't know about the youth of today, but we're taught that we have the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the founding fathers separated the legislative branch because it's supposed to be made an uphill battle to put laws on our backs. Well, Congress in the 20th century wanted to get rid of that. The FTC just celebrated their 100th anniversary 2 weeks ago. And what they've done that no one really knows, except I think the inner legal world of D.C., is that the Congress gave the power to the government agencies to just operate without any of those separations. So I say the separating powers, the fingers combine and they turned into a fist. And they turned into a fist like this. I found out these guys get to make up their own rules because Congress says you can make your own rules. You just have to get them approved. Now, you know what the approval process in Congress is. It's really staffers run the show. It's just slide it through and don't become noticeable, and it comes through. Most of the people that they go after are corporations. Corporations not really sympathetic media stories are victims, and they've got a bunch of money to roll over. So the game perpetuates. They have their own courts. They have lawyers operating as investigators so that they can call attorney privilege when the investigator has to turn over how he got what. They have this deck so stacked in their favor in the administrative court process, it's unbelievable. And Congress, and as a matter of fact, the judge has an ftc.gov email address, and he's in their building, and their courtroom's in their building. And they seem to be just fine with that. And when I would be so incredulous by this, I said lawyers in D.C. that knew about this, and they're mostly the people that specialize in administrative law, looked at me like I'd just been diagnosed with a terminal disease. Like, you're toast. There's nothing you can do. I am so sorry, Mike. And I was like, I'm just, and continually, 2011, I was like, this is not happening to me. So keep in mind, we have a great loyal base of clients, and we get almost perfect scores, if not perfect scores. The last inspection we had in 2013, perfect from CLIA on our lab operations. Doesn't matter. What it was very clear to me was, okay, this is some old group that has really understood how to position this, and the judiciary won't come in because Congress makes the law. So they have neutralized the judicial system in involving themselves in this because Congress, who makes the law, the judicial system has to follow, says you can't intervene in an administrative process till the administrative process is over. And let me tell you, that administrative process, in the book I call it the long haul up Justice Mountain, because the ticket to go up that mountain is years and millions. And what I also call reputation assassination. And the fact of the matter is, in human nature, I'm the same way. If someone's accused of something and they're going through this process, you're certainly not gonna scream they're innocent if you don't know what's going on. And you're probably gonna think, well, they did something wrong. And the fact that you're gonna go through that process alone for those many years and cost that much money makes people roll. It's like, and I talk in the book about my civics teacher and Mrs. Lewandowski, who taught me when I was 14. Who knew it was? She said, Mike, there's only two types of fare. There's fare where you pay taxi fare, and there's fare with rides. And if you think there's a third type of fare, you're going to be frustrated and waste a lot of energy. I remembered that because it was this other girl, Denise, that said, that's not fair. And she dropped her chalk. And she has the whole class, the fair. That's not fair? Really? You're going to expect fair? Let me tell you about fair. And that's where I thought it was here. I said, well, this isn't fair. Big surprise. DC's not fair. So I had to decide what to do. And what we decided to do was wait. And I kind of jumped over here because these things are so hard to read. So we hope they will just go away. And so now comes more money. So now they say there's no standards. There are no rules. They get to decide what you've done on a case-by-case basis. Because we're like, oh, I did something wrong. Okay, how am I responsible for that? How do I make it better? Is there a price I have to pay for doing something wrong? What is it? None of that was coming on. What are we going to do? Did we do something wrong in our cybersecurity? What can we do? There were no products for companies under 250 employees. There wasn't anything. We had to go, and they wouldn't tell you what you had to do. So if you don't know what you have to do, and there's no products, the only way to do is we shot for the top. TrustWave, WebSense, going to RSA in California, and I had to get, we found 3 companies that would take their high-end, big corporate products and dumb it down for us and box it in. And we still had to pay in 6 figures for it. But we're like, what are we going to do to make these people go away? The next thing we did is hope and wait. So we have the lawyers saying, well, we have Assange now, we have WikiLeaks. They're busy. You're a cancer detection center. You're in medicine. I don't know why the heck. Just be nice, give them what they want, and wait. And I got in fights with the lawyers all the time because I said, I'm not signing anything. And they never believed me. These guys, absolutely, my own lawyers did not believe I was not signing anything no matter what. They thought that was so amusing. So I decided that I was going to have to tell this story. I thought, okay, the way I saw the analysis, I was dead no matter what, so I'm going to go down in flames. I'm going to make this fun. I'm going to make this a project. I'm going to rock forward. Because I thought, there's no way in hell I was going to walk through the rest of my life feeling like I'd been wronged and no one believing me and just accepting. I just couldn't do it. So I thought, well, how can I do it? The judicial system seems to be real fair here. That's removed from me. The media is probably not going to believe this. So I was power of the pen. I'm going to write a book. So I start book writing and researching, and I came in and told my VP, and by this time we have in-house counsel, by the way. So now we have in-house lawyers, and the cost to the company was, I now know, since so many of them have now been deposed, that they knew something was up, but we didn't want to tell them, because what are we going to tell them? And the stress on my VP and the managers that knew about this. I mean, when you work in healthcare and you do good work and you take pride in what you do and you're helping people live and you think you live in America and you run into this story, it is not a pleasant observation to have all your foundational beliefs just shredded. And I own the company, they didn't. So a few of them decided it might be better to go home and find another job. So that's what I call psychological warfare. And it also took all our energy away from what we needed to do. We know Obamacare is coming, and we need to focus on molecular diagnostics, breast cancer, and getting elsewhere in. And when you're a small company and you're focusing on this, it just shifted all the energy. I mean, they just tied our feet up, so we were just, covered in this. But I start writing the book, and I start doing research, and I told them I was taking a semi-sabbatical. I was only coming in the office Monday and Wednesday, and I was writing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which kind of worked. Oops, wrong way, sorry. So the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, they say they're finished. And now, by this time, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And so I told my lawyer. I'm also, now at this point, I'm wiser. I'm managing the lawyers that are defending me. To me, everyone's almost the enemy in a way. I mean, I had really good lawyers, but I meant some real amazingly bad ones. And so I said, okay, I want them to, they said they were done. They were going to meet and decide what to do. And I asked them, is there anything else you need? Would you like to come to Atlanta? No, we don't want to come to Atlanta, and we don't need anything else. We have everything we need. So in October of 2011, they said, well, we want a consent decree. We want to start consent decree negotiations. You have to understand, these people are so entertaining that they just think that's a slam dunk. And so the fun part was when I said no. They're just like, what? No? What's no mean? So they have no clue what no is. And then they're angry. And then comes the threats. We're suing you tomorrow. The case is ready. Sue. Because I want them to sue. I'm like, let's show everyone how you are. And it didn't show up. And then Christmas Eve, they also have this really dirty streak. They love to send things to you Fridays at 5 o'clock before major holidays. They just love to rattle you. So here it is, Christmas Eve. I'm up in Michigan, and boom, I get a CID. And a CID is a subpoena on steroids, where the federal government makes their own rules, so you have to really answer questions, and your lawyer can hardly ever intervene, unlike a normal non-federal subpoena. So now I'm trying to retrain my lawyers that, okay, now the FTC knows I'm not going to sign anything. So for the first time in a couple years, they're like, wow, they're not rolling over that little teeny company in Atlanta. And I wanted to drag this out to show everyone what They do. So we had to fight the CID. So to fight the CID, this is the stuff that is amazing. To fight the CID came from Julie Brill, who's one of the 5 commissioners at the Federal Trade Commission. She was the commissioner that was handling this vertical of cybersecurity. So she's the one that signed it. So when you want to quash it, you have to follow their rules. And their rules are, when you want to quash it, you have to go back to the person that sent it to you and said, can you please quash it? Because that's really that's a high shot. And then there's a hearing. And my lawyers just mentioned conversation that there's a hearing. I said, well, of course I want to be at my hearing. Oh, no, you can't come to your hearing. What do you mean I can't come? No, you can't come to your hearing. What do you mean? See, this is a type of little flashbulbs throughout the story that, like, do you know if you tell an American that you can't come to your own hearing, they'd be like, what? Just like me, like, what do you mean? It's so unbelievable. I thought, well, no one's going to believe me. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask to come to our hearing, and we're going to take that rejection, and we're going to stick it up on a big flagpole. So sure enough, I got this request to attend hearing denied. Boom. Then you have to go to the next step. Now you have to go to the full commission, and you have to tell them your reasons why. More lawyer money, by the way. And then they get to buy time, and then they come out. Well, we actually kind of got a lucky break. The Federal Trade Commission always has 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans in a Democrat administration, vice versa, and Republicans. So right now, at that point, they had 3 Democrats, all they're going to be on board, and I mean some big-time zealots pointed by Obama. I mean big time. They are out to save the world. You're bad. You're in a corporation, and they've been in academia and government all their life. And then we had a Republican appointed by Obama, and then we had a Republican appointed by Bush, who was leaving. So the Republican appointed by Obama abstains. And then the Republican by Bush wrote an opinion. This was a lucky break because we thought we were going to get 5-0 again. And it was 3-1-1. And his opinion said, this company, Tyversa, has a financial self-interest in doing this. They're no ordinary witness. Do not use any evidence from that company. No. Of course, they ignore it and they move on. But see, my MO is, I know I'm dead. I want everyone to see this. I want it in their writing. So we we go through this. I'm going to back up 1 second to tell you something else real quick here. So what happened then is, they won. So it's, are you going to sit for your CID now? By now, it's the summer. So I've chewed up like 6 months, 7 months of their time, which just has them furious. And we also learned they can't just make you show up. After that, they have to go to the Department of Justice and get an order. So they have to go to Justice. They have to explain everything. They have to, this is work. This is time. They don't like work. They have to sue me, sit. And it comes, because we're arguments saying we're not being cooperative. We want to go to court because we don't think you have jurisdiction to do this. The rules are vague. We're a medical facility. Health and Human Services runs us, not you. You've never said there's rules. You've never had a hearing. You've never gotten public comment. This is insane. The only reason people roll is because they're not wanting to go through the meat grinder I'm going through right now. So we get to court. Well, that doesn't happen until September. And we draw Judge Duffy, which was a lucky draw, because Judge Duffy is, while he was a U.S. attorney, he's former military, he's very serious. The first thing out of his mouth at the hearing was, I see I brought you out of Washington, D.C. What a fine city to pull you out of. And he starts beating up the FTC lawyers. And it was, we knew, because I had a friend that knew him, we knew that he enjoyed, really, is almost like sick sport, beating up lawyers that didn't have their act together in court. So we just shut up for 30 minutes. And yet he's not an activist judge. We don't want activist judges. So he beat him up. He gave him all sorts of hints of what would come if he ever had jurisdiction. He dragged it out. And the Monday after Thanksgiving, because he's a good guy, he put out his ruling. And his ruling was, as terrible as this is, I don't have jurisdiction here, because the Supreme Court and Congress has said you have to finish the administrative process. And the government can haul pretty much anyone in for any reason, for anything, to question them. So while I'm not ruling on the merits of this case, and the merits of this case look pretty questionable, that's not what's in front of me. What's in front of me is, can anyone be pulled in? And the answer is yes. Now, we sat down February 2013. I gave him a taste of what was to come. And so by this time, there's book marketing. there's a website up. I've been traveling and I've been writing the book and isolating myself, and they're not happy because they feel annoyed. Who the hell am I to do something so, I don't know, rude? And I'm having a great time because I know they're upset. So we're having a great time, and so I discover, and then I'm going to bring you up to speed what happened. In the final part of the book, I discover, that ironically, this whole thing with P2P and files getting out in the government started in 2002 when two scientists of Hewlett-Packard went out and said, look, this software that these 6 or 7 manufacturers of this P2P software is made to dupe. It is leaky. It is not written well, and this is why we have to rein in their behavior. So Commerce in the Senate, I believe, assigned the Federal Trade Commission to take care of this. And so what did they do? Like a bunch of it's arrogance is the foundation here. It's like, so they didn't make a rule. They had them sign a voluntary code of conduct. And then in 2004, they come in and they use their lingo, which I say half-truths of half-truth congressional testimony. It appears to be decreasing. But in the real world, it's going out. CBS is reporting files are going out. Homeland Security, everyone's getting upset because well-intentioned employees of the federal government are leaking massive amounts of data. They're finding Pentagon backbones, they're finding tax returns, they're finding big stuff and small stuff. Why? We don't have bad people here in this number. What's going on? And Homeland Security and the media really nail it. And in 2006, U.S. Patent and Trade writes a story about features to induce features to induce users to share. They're saying this stuff absolutely is built to dupe, and this code of conduct did nothing, and the next code of conduct did nothing, and this software got worse. And that would make perfect sense when my employee, while she knew she shouldn't be listening to music at work, and it was all against all our policies, and it was in our handbook, and short of babysitting everyone 7/24 and breathing down their throats, you're going to have employees that do things like that. Short of that, nothing happened. And that the real culprit is the software. And the sloppiness of the FTC in managing this is the real problem. And that hearing in 2007 was the full circle, because that was Bobick and Wesley Clark saying, let's all this stuff. They're building a company off this. They're going out and they're scooping up all these files. And they're calling everyone saying, would you like to pay us for this information? And they're keeping these files. And the FTC was mad because the biggest thing about the FTC is they hate bad press. You want to get them to react, they don't want bad press. And basically they're like teenagers and Congress is the big parent. And they don't want to get in trouble in front of Congress. And they don't want to find out in a hearing how bad this is, but that's what happened. So they were very upset with Tyversa and Wesley Clark. So they started to work together. Now, I didn't know that part at the time, right? So this is where we end. The book comes out, and the book ends when they sue me. So what happens the rest of the summer is I start, I can't tell you, writing a book. I mean, I had editors because, I can write pretty well, but you got to surround yourself with people that know more than you do. And I had really good editors that would just yell at me for not wanting to exhaust you as the reader because it's an intense story and get things done. So the book came out, and I was supposed to speak at Americans for Prosperity on the 29th in Orlando. And on that morning, the phone rang, and it was the Associated Press. And they woke me up in my hotel, and they said, you've just been sued by the Federal Trade Commission. Now, you have to understand, I was really excited by this because that meant that this story was going to get out. People were going to learn about this. This is awesome, which my lawyers could not get used to. They're like, this is not good news. I'm like, yes, it is. Because I know I'm dead anyway, so we might as well have a good time. But we had to stop the book. So the last page of that book was written the last chapter of the book was written in like 12 hours. So it's the most poorly edited, so forgive me. Okay, a week later, Tyversa sues me for defamation. A month later, my father goes into hospice and he dies in October. Then Christmas comes. We are sideswiped. My VP resigns, moves to Colorado. My in-house lawyer leaves. People start flying the coop. The Federal Trade Commission subpoenas 40 people. Doctors, vendors. I mean, they come in. They are they don't need anything else. They were on operation revenge. They came in to just intimidate and pound everybody down. And what they cannot get around their head is that all I want to do is hold up a mirror. And we had to go to Idaho to interview a sales rep who resigned in 2006. I mean, I get just stories like this are crazy. And that was what was obsessed a lot of my time until April. Well, in January, the company ceased operations, started to skip that one big one. And we had to shut down. And everyone lost their job. And I still have about $250,000 of lab equipment to liquidate. And the company car just got sold like 2 weeks ago because I was dealing with survival. Could do hardly any book promotion. I did speak at Heritage. You know, I did some stuff, and it got. I was pushing it in the hands of the powerful, and I was in Congress for about a year before then because oversight, in my mind, oversight had been duped. So I went to House Oversight, and I started getting to know the staffers, and I started educating them and not asking for favors, not running in with the help me save me, but trying to be big picture. And it built a really good relationship. And hindsight's 2020, that was one of the smartest things I ever did. Because on October 14th, my phone rang, and it was a whistleblower from Tyversa. And that is Rick Wallace. And Rick Wallace, I can't tell you a lot about this, except what's in the press, but I can talk about what's already out. But he called me. And he was a defeated man. He was in tears. He was apologetic. He said he ruined LabMD. He ruined the life of the patients. He did this, he did this, he did this. This guy was borderline suicidal. His wife got on the phone. His kid got on the phone. I mean, it was surreal. And he was terrified that I was going to send him to jail and maul him. And in spite of that, he had to cleanse himself and somehow make amends because he's the guy that took it. And he said, it's all BS. This stuff's just a lie. And these people don't really even know what a big lie it is. So he comes in, and I call Congress, and I said, and by this time I could just call them up and say, we got, this big thing. I'm in Congress 2 days later, blow them out of the water, start an investigation, and we have hearings I had hearings where I testified in July of this year with ISA. So now we have a government investigation. We have ISA asking the Federal Trade Commission to be inspected by their inspector. It just came out in the news a couple days ago that some of the allegations were allowed to be public. And one of the allegations of the whistleblower is that Alan Shearer was aware that the accusations from Tyversa that our file was found in 4 places around the world was false, and that they never verified the evidence. And this is all, and when you're a zealot, and you don't understand why we had the founding fathers separate powers, and you think you want to save the world, this type of behavior is okay. They justify this type of stuff. And so what we had is, so now we're at a huge battle that is actually, the ship's really turning. So all I want to do next, if that's okay, is I want to just show the 6-minute testimony because it tightens it up and it just probably there might be a couple points I missed. And then I want to take questions. Is that all right? We're on good time track? Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee. My name is Michael Daugherty, and I'm the president and CEO of LabMD, a cancer detection laboratory based in Atlanta, Georgia. We were a private company that I founded in 1996, a small medical facility that at its peak employed approximately 40 medical professionals who touched nearly 1 million lives. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you as a small businessman and medical professional about my experience and opinion at the hands of the Federal Trade Commission. What happened to my company, its employees, physicians, and their patients is what springs from the FTC's unsupervised playbook. And that playbook relies upon coercive and extortionate strategies to make large and small companies alike quickly succumb to FTC demands. In May 2008, our nightmare began with a call that could happen to any American. It was from Robert Baubeck, the CEO of Tyversa. And in the words of former FTC Commissioner Rausch, Tyversa is more than an ordinary witness, informant, or whistleblower. It is a commercial entity that has a financial interest in intentionally exposing and capturing sensitive files on computer networks. Mr. Baubick told LabMD that Tyversa had found LabMD patient data on the internet but refused to tell us more unless we paid and retained them. Everyone in medicine knows you cannot go out intentionally looking for vulnerable medical files so you can take them, read them, keep them, distribute them. This is probably a crime, but it's definitely vigilante behavior, and it's outrageous. In January 2010, Alan Shear, an attorney with the FTC, contacted LabMD with an 11-page, single-spaced letter opening a non-public inquiry. We responded by sending in nearly 10,000 pages of documents, and we invited the FTC to come to Atlanta to see our facility, to tell us what we were to do differently, to tell us what their standards were. The FTC declined. We quickly discovered that until told otherwise by the courts or Congress, the FTC presumes to have jurisdiction to investigate any company or person. When we asked the FTC where they were going with this, they would obscurely mention consent decrees, and we learned that FTC consent decrees actually are this. You sign up for 20 years of audits, you enter the FTC Hall of Shame via craftily worded press releases and half-truth congressional testimony. The fact that you've not been found of any wrongdoing stays buried deep in the fine print, and the threat of being tied up for years in court and drained financially is their gun to the head to extract false confessions. In August 2010, I had to find out what was going on here because something felt odd and wrong, and I learned that Homeland Security gave $24 million to Dartmouth to partially fund their data hemorrhage study, and Dartmouth stated that it got the LabMD file by using Tyversa's unique and powerful technology. Tyversa put out a press release in May 2009, I found, which in part stated, Tyversa, and this is their words, Tyversa today announced the findings of new research that revealed 13 million breach files emanating from over 4 million sources. Tyversa's patent-pending technology monitors over 450 million users issuing 1.5 billion searches per day. Over a 2-week period, Dartmouth College researchers and Tyversa searched file-sharing networks and discovered a treasure trove, a spreadsheet from an AIDS clinic with 232 client names, a 1,718-page document from a medical testing laboratory, and requiring no software or hardware, Tyversa detects, locates, and identifies exposed files in real time, end quote. What does Tyversa want you to think exposed means? Out of 13 million files found by Tyversa, how odd is it that the two mentioned in their press release are sitting at this table today? I was stunned that nobody was asking who this private company was who was stockpiling other people's sensitive information. What gave them the right to assume ownership? September 2013 to April 2014, the FTC pursued litigation against LabMD via their optional administrative process rather than in federal court. FTC Commissioner Wright said this process provides the FTC with institutional and procedural advantages. This is lawyer speak, for the FTC stacks the deck way in favor via rules Congress allows them to make. They admit hearsay that would never fly in federal court, which is why we aren't in federal court. Federal courts won't intervene because Congress says they can't. When asked about the FTC data security standards, Alan Shear said, and I quote, "There is nothing out there for a company to look at. There is no rulemaking. No rules have been issued. Yet even without any standards, they show others what happens if you push back. They subpoenaed approximately 40 different individuals in my company, long gone LabMD employees that left the company up to 7 years before, current staff, managers, outside physicians, vendors. These witnesses were forced to retain counsel and were intimidated and scared. Here is the message to all that are watching from the FTC. This is FTC justice, and this is going to happen to you if you don't play along." And then the penny dropped. During the trial, a former Tyversa employee who was to testify regarding Tyversa's acquisition of LabMD data and subsequent submission of the data to the FTC invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. All Americans should be outraged by the FTC's unchecked ability to pursue a claim that is not based on any legal standard. Outraged that the FTC's administrative proceedings do not afford the same guarantees of due process that our federal courts provide. And outraged with the FTC's use of and reliance upon information from a private for-profit entity. If this has happened to LabMD, a small medical facility, a cancer detection center, this can happen to anyone. This does nothing to help Americans adapt to the constantly changing cybersecurity landscape. We are not mind readers. We are law-abiding citizens. I call on the FTC to stop attacking victims of crimes, and I thank the committee for its time and attention to this matter.